Yes, Carol has burned through many a church in her day. How any right-thinking congregation doesn't take one look and come after her with crosses ablazing is beyond me. I've mentioned the nice folks that got onto her child-snatching tendencies, but there are more. So much more. The first ones in my memory are the Catholics. No, our family is not Catholic at all, and yes, she totally lied that she had been baptized into the church. She really went for all the pomp and the ceremony. She's a big one for ceremony because it's oppression with fancy decorations. So she started saying grace at every family meal, and Grandpa just thought it was great that his daughter was getting more spiritual and we should all go along with it. Let me tell you how Carol said grace. Each time was a long, rambling speech about how we were all wicked and owed the Lord fealty, and if he so much as sneezed, she would make a face and start all over, droning on and on while your stomach turned into a painful vortex of hunger. It was a 4th of July barbecue. Right after Carol had started over for the 9th time, that Uncle Bob broke. He started shoving handfuls of food into his mouth, chewing noisily and making faces so all the kids burst out giggling. Carol made cat butt face, but her spell was broken and she was powerless to do anything. That's probably what led to Aunt Amy arriving home one evening to find Carol and the priest sitting in her living room. The priest said her whole family read Carol, were concerned about her living in sin with a man she wasn't married to, and he'd like to talk to her about her non-existent drinking problem to boot. Amy took one look at them and said she hadn't invited them, and if they didn't get out right now, she was calling the cops. The priest immediately knew he'd gone out of his depth, but Carol jumped up and started screaming about how Amy's sin was bleeding into the family and tarnishing it. Amy got a glass of lukewarm tap water and tossed it at Carol. Carol fell to the floor screaming like it had been scalding hot. The priest shot Amy a look like a man who had stepped into a shark tank thinking it was full of dolphins. Amy ignored him and went into the kitchen, loudly counting to 20. By the time she got to 15, she heard car doors. Bob called the priest and lit into him when he got home that night, sending the final nail into Carol's Catholic coffin. The next lucky stiffs to get Carol were the Jehovah's Witnesses, and let me tell you, that was quite a romp. Carol not only stopped celebrating holidays, she decided we shouldn't celebrate them either. She broke in and trashed our Christmas tree. We couldn't prove it was her, but come on. But the real fun was my cousin Ellie's birthday. Now, JWs are allowed to celebrate anniversaries and birthdays, but Carol decided it was too fancy and accidentally fell on the cake Uncle Craig's wife had spent hours making. She chased Carol around with the piñata stick and we let her because we figured she needed to blow off some steam. We weren't the ones who got her kicked out of the JWs though. That one was all Carol. She was chomping at the bit to go and witness people, and I'll give you 2 guesses why. The person they sent to go door to door with her, not sure what they call it, was alarmed at her car salesman tactics and general manipulation. She would barge into people's houses and threaten to have a heart attack unless they hurt her. The last straw was when she threatened a single mother with CPS unless she let them in. Carol was called into a meeting with an elder and ended up threatening the elder with reporting him for CSA. This brilliant tactic did not endear her to them at all, and Carol was kicked out. She hopped to the Unitarians next, lasted a grand total of 3 months before she accused a girl in church of having a drug habit. The poor girl had allergies and was the minister's daughter. Awkward. This is where it goes from funny to sad to horrible. At the Episcopalian church Carol joined next, there was this guy. Wife was separating from him and the church. Daughter was straying from the path. Black clothes, heavy metal, Tim Burton movies, typical teenager stuff. The guy was seeking help from the pastor, who told him the usual things you would hear in a case like this. Stay strong. Every kid goes through something like this. Keep the faith, etc. Then along comes Carol. Carol could not go without butting into everyone's business, so she knew all about the guy's divorce. How awful. His wife was an ungodly whore. She was rooking his daughter from the path of light. The pastor had recommended counseling. Carol said that his daughter was in too serious of spiritual danger for that. She needed an exorcism. I don't know how big exorcism is in the Episcopalian Church, but if it exists at all, I don't think it's anything like the fiasco my aunt planned. She didn't need no fancy priest or holy water. They just need 5 strong guys to hold a tiny 14-year-old down while they screamed at her. I can't imagine what was running through this guy's head to let Carol talk him into this. Maybe he was just really grief-stricken about his family and struggling to put it into terms of his faith. Maybe he was a domineering tyrant who sensed his control slipping. Either way, he made the worst decision of his life when he listened to my aunt. I can't even imagine what they told the 5 guys to get them to help. Apparently, they were all otherwise upstanding members of the church. The girl arrived for her 3-day stay at her father's house. She left it on a stretcher. Carol instructed the 5 men to hold the girl down to a bare mattress in the cold basement while she went through the exorcism rite she had concocted out of sheer bullshit. She pushed verses on the girl, like actually tore pages from the Bible and pressed them against her. Spoke in tongues, doused the girl from a water bottle, all the while everyone was screaming at her to let the devil out of her. The girl kept begging to be let go. She was thirsty and had to go to the bathroom. Carol told the men that if they gave her anything, the ritual would be void and they'd have to start over. It went on for over a day, a grueling ordeal for everyone involved. When the girl passed out, they thought they had made progress. Actually, no. What really happened was the girl had undiagnosed type 2 diabetes and had just slipped into a coma. When they couldn't wake her up, one of the 5 men went to call an ambulance. Carol stopped him and said no. If they told someone, they would be seen as responsible. She told them to carry the girl upstairs and place her on her own bed, and they would call his wife after a few hours and accuse her of poisoning the girl. Well, the dad had a limit, and that one was it. He charged upstairs and called an ambulance. They got the girl to a hospital and managed to save her life. The dad lost both custody and the respect of his daughter indefinitely. And Carol, she spun it around so that most of the fault lay with the father. He's the one who wanted the exorcism. She really requested the 5 other guys because she wanted to protect the girl from her father. Well, in that horrible convolution that only happens around my aunt, everyone involved wound up excommunicated from that church. These are just some of the many religions tried out by my aunt over the years. The only denomination she skipped over were Judaism and anything involving brown people, because she is also fantastically racist. The only common thread between them is that she used them as a tool to pick at other people, much like holidays or her own son. Right around Bob and Amy's wedding, I think she was trying for the evangelical megachurch downtown, but as we all know, her only religion now is the nice men in white.